A civilization without men, until one human appeared. The escape pod tumbled through the void and its pilot fought to stay conscious as alarms screamed around him, but the darkness pulled him under before he could send a distress signal, and when he woke, the silence was absolute. Ryan Carter opened his eyes to soft blue light filtering through tall windows and his body ached from the crash. But he was alive and breathing, and that seemed impossible given what he remembered of the battle. But as he tried to sit up, gentle hands pressed him back down and a voice spoke in a language he did not understand. Yet somehow the translator implant in his ear began to work, and the words became clear. You must rest, human. Your body needs time to heal. He turned his head and saw her standing beside the bed, and she was tall with silver skin that seemed to glow faintly in the light, and her eyes were large and violet, and filled with curiosity, mixed with something else he could not name. And her hair fell in waves of deep purple to her shoulders, and she wore robes of white that marked her as some kind of healer or scientist. Where am I? He asked, and his voice came out, rough. You are on Valara Prime, the third planet in the Andali system, and you are safe here. Safe seemed like a strange word given that his ship had been destroyed and his crew was scattered across the stars if they survived at all, but he was too tired to argue, and the woman seemed genuine in her concern, so he nodded and let himself relax back into the bed. My name is Ryan, he said after a moment. I am called Maya, and I am a medical researcher here in the capital city, and you are the first human we have ever encountered. That surprised him, though perhaps it should not have, since humanity had only recently begun exploring this region of space and the galaxy was vast beyond imagination. But what surprised him more was the way she looked at him, with an intensity that went beyond scientific curiosity, and it made him uncomfortable in a way he could not explain. Over the next few days, Ryan learned that Valara Prime was home to a civilization unlike anything humanity had ever encountered, and the people here called themselves the Valari, and they were all women. And every single one of them, from the scientists who studied him, to the guards who stood outside his room, to the leaders who came to ask him questions about his people. There are no men on your world, he asked Maya one afternoon as she checked the devices monitoring his recovery. No, she said simply. And there have not been for over 3,000 years, and our species evolved differently from yours, and we reproduce through a process that requires only genetic material from two females, and we have built our society without the need for males. But how do you? She started to say, but stopped himself because it seemed rude to ask. How do we what? Maya asked with a slight smile. Nothing. He muttered and felt heat rise to his face. Maya laughed, softly, and it was a pleasant sound like wind chimes, and she sat down in the chair beside his bed and folded her hands in her lap. You want to know about our reproduction, or perhaps about our culture and what it is like to live in a world of only women? And these are natural questions. Ryan and I do not mind answering them. So she told him, and she explained that Valari society was built on cooperation rather than competition, and that without the biological drives that often led to conflict between males and other species, they had developed differently. And their government was a council of elected leaders, and their economy was based on shared resources and innovation, and their art and music and literature were celebrated as the highest achievements of their culture. It sounds like paradise, Ryan said, though he was not sure he believed it. It is not perfect, Maya admitted. And we have our conflicts and disagreements like any people, but we have learned to resolve them through dialogue, rather than violence. And we have not had a war in over 1,000 years. Ryan thought about humanity, with its endless conflicts and territorial disputes, and the battle that had brought him here. And he felt a strange mix of shame and sadness as the weeks passed. Ryan grew stronger, and the Valari scientists cleared him to leave the medical facility, and he was given quarters in the city, and a guide named Lisa who showed him around, and Lisa was younger than Maya, with bright green eyes and skin that shimmered like copper in the sunlight, and she was endlessly curious about human culture and asked him 1,000 questions about Earth and its people. The city itself was beautiful beyond words, and the buildings were tall spires of white stone, and glass that seemed to grow organically from the ground, and gardens filled with strange flowers bloomed on every corner, and the air was clean and sweet, and the people moved through the streets with a grace and purpose that Ryan found mesmerizing. But as time went on, he began to notice something strange, and everywhere he went, The Valari women watched him with open fascination, and they would stop their conversations to stare as he passed, and some would approach him with questions or simply to touch his hand or his hair as if confirming that he was real. "You must understand," Lisa told him one evening as they sat in a garden overlooking the city, "that you are unique here, and we have legends of species with 2 genders, and of males and females living together. But they are only stories to us and myths from the ancient past, and now here you are. Proof that such beings exist, and it is overwhelming for many of my people." Ryan did not know what to say to that, and he felt like a curiosity, on display rather than a person, but he tried to be patient and understanding because he was a guest here, and these people had saved his life. But there was one woman who did not treat him like a novelty, and Maya continued to visit him regularly, and they would talk for hours about everything from philosophy to music to the nature of consciousness. And Ryan found himself looking forward to these conversations more than anything else, and he realized with a start one day that he was falling in love with her. It was absurd, of course, and she was an alien, and he was stranded on a world where he was the only male, and there was no future in such feelings, but his heart did not seem to care about logic or reason. "Maya," he said one evening as they walked through the gardens and the twin moons of Valara Prime rose over the horizon, "and I need to tell you something." She stopped and turned to face him, and her violet eyes were serious, and I know she said quietly, "You know what?" he asked. "That you have feelings for me, and I have seen it in the way you look at me and the way you speak, and it would be impossible not to notice." Ryan felt his face burn. "And I am sorry if I have made you uncomfortable." "You have not," Maya said, and she stepped closer to him. "And I must confess that I have feelings for you as well, and it is strange and frightening because nothing in my experience has prepared me for this. And in our legends, the relationships between males and females are described as partnerships of equals and as bonds that transcend biology. And I think perhaps I am beginning to understand what those stories meant." Ryan reached out and took her hand, and her skin was warm and soft, and she smiled at him. And in that moment, he felt like he had found something precious and rare. But their happiness was short-lived because word of their relationship spread through the city. And soon the council summoned Ryan to appear before them, and Maya went with him, and they stood together in the great hall where the leaders of Valara Prime sat in judgment. The council was not hostile, but they were concerned, and the eldest among them, a woman named Claire, with hair like starlight and eyes that had seen centuries, spoke for them all. "Ryan, Carter, you are an honored guest here, and we have welcomed you as one of our own. But your presence has created complications we did not anticipate, and many of our people are fascinated by you, and some have expressed desires we do not fully understand, and we fear that your influence may disrupt the harmony of our society." Ryan felt anger rise in his chest, but Maya squeezed his hand, and he forced himself to remain calm. "I mean no harm to your people," he said, "and I have only tried to learn from you, and to share what I know of my own culture, and if my presence here is a problem, then I will leave as soon as possible." "No," Claire said, and her voice was gentle, "and we are not asking you to leave, and we are asking you to help us understand, and your relationship with Maya has become a symbol for many of our people, and some see it as proof that our old legends were true, and that there is value in partnerships between different types of beings, and others fear it as a threat to our way of life, and we need time to process these changes and to decide how to move forward." Maya stepped forward and spoke with quiet authority. "And I understand your concerns, honored council, but I believe that Ryan has given us a gift, whether we asked for it or not. And he has shown us that there are other ways of being and other forms of connection, and to reject that out of fear would be to betray the values our civilization was built upon." The council debated for hours, but in the end, they agreed to allow Ryan to stay and to permit his relationship with Maya to continue, and they declared that the Valari people would study this new dynamic and learn from it. Months turned into a year, and Ryan became a part of Valari society, and he taught them about human technology and culture, and they taught him about their science and philosophy. And his relationship with Maya deepened into something profound and unshakable. and slowly the Valari began to change, and some of the women formed close bonds with Ryan, not romantic but deep-friends, and new ideas flourished, and the council commissioned studies into the possibility of establishing relations with